We are now coming up on 30 seconds to acquisition of the command module.
Oh, welcome everybody to Imagination TV. We're back in my garage, which was where we started this thing 2.5 years ago, and I have slight trauma every time that I'm involved with hosting one of these shows after going through 100 daily live TV shows to try and not only rescue AIM from oblivion, but more importantly, I've never felt a moment like that moment when the world stopped to try and seize the opportunity amongst the chaos and the pain and the heartache and the devastation to see how we could rewrite the world. We've inherited some patterns over the last 500 years, some that are effective, some that are really flawed and are untethered, and we're seeing the consequences of that in our current time on planet Earth. And we're really pumped in this next 10 years to see what we can do to chase down that target of 1.5 degrees, to shift the way our economic systems move, and to bring a series of unlikely connections together again and again and again to try and crack the code on systemic change. So tonight is the first 5 episodes we'll be doing as a sort of sprint series to look at this big vision for us over the next decade to make the world as effective as it can be, to unleash imagination and to find these different pathways to success. And there'll be some people that we're working with as key partners that we're going to feature either a form of announcement or just feature the work that we're doing together and see what's emerging. So our first guest today is, we're catching up with Dave Williams, who I've been lucky to know you, Dave, for a while now through a variety of different fields. So tell the crowd and the crew in the AIM universe your sort of pathway and the world of work that you found yourself into now.
Yeah, sure. Super happy to be part of Imagination Labs. So thanks for inviting me on, Jack. I guess my very top line of my story, came out of a pretty standard sort of Aussie background of relative privilege, went into finance and economics and stuff like that in the business world, jumped out of that and then spent a lot of time learning and listening in all kinds of different spaces and rural environments really across Africa and Latin America for a good 15 years or so. Spent a good time of then on thinking about challenges that we're facing Australia and how could policy settings be different in this country. And now I've been working most lately with an organization called Palladium. And that's back to that agenda of rural livelihoods and inclusion and also climate and nature and how to, I guess, value what's going on in communities and support people to choose the destinies and paths that they want, and then also value that connection to nature and understand how we can better respect that, restore, adapt, be resilient, but then improve and create a more sustainable relationship with nature as well as between ourselves and our communities.
And how do you see, when you pick up the phone and got in touch with us with the work with Palladium, like what's the opportunity you see for us to work together, and what's sort of the area where you're excited about exploring a partnership or what that can look like?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different things, but one that first cab off the rank, I think that's worth exploring, we've been talking about, is you have a situation here in the Pacific where you might have a set of circumstances and a context that's taking us to a really negative place. With fear and security and great power competition being talked about in relation to the Pacific, an area that's often just been ignored and seen as pretty irrelevant on the global stage, is now starting to get this kind of negative discourse around it. It's at the very pointy end, not of the great power competition, but of the climate crisis that's occurring, and they're on the front line of that. And instead of people really thinking about working with those nations and the people in them and the young people to support solutions that are effective for them and are really respecting what they want for their own destinies. We're hearing this kind of competition over their attention and trying to buy them off. And then often a really negative discourse around young people being a volatile, explosive, potential negative energy that needs to be controlled and contained. And so there's lots of really great efforts that have been made for the last 60 or 70 years in trying to contribute to a different agenda for the Pacific, and great efforts and certain progress that's been made. What strikes me is in this moment where you're getting this bit of a crux and negativity is that you need a bit of a different conversation. You need a different spark. And so that was where, turned to you guys and just thought, is there a way that into this situation, we can inject something that's much more positive connection, respecting local communities, and really giving voice to young people to then take charge of what it is that they want for their own destiny and solving the challenges that they're facing in a way that's different to your traditional development models that are usually somehow brought from a Western construct and then, however well-intentioned, delivered to a host country. And I think that's the opposite of how AIM works. So if there's a way that we can connect up that AIM spark and those unlikely connections that you're always talking about, Jack, of creating that between young people in the Pacific with people well outside their experience set, and just turn around the narrative. Young people are the best resource that we have, the only hope that we have for actually tackling some of these huge challenges in the Pacific. It's not about us forcing an agenda and a solution on those countries.
No, and I think from our end, like we're really excited to stand with you guys and then to put our arms out to the Pacific and say, look, if we can be helpful, let's go. And the solution, I believe, is always about one planet together. I'm about to have a yarn of Francois, and I'm sure we'll get into planetism and talk about what that looks like. But when we, imagination as a country, that's the very reason why we're making this network, to have a central place where you can bring all of humanity together. And so that's part one. Part two is, I think, there is a practical prize. Like sometimes I have no idea what the pathway is, but sometimes there is actually a pathway. And one of these pathways is establishing custodial economies again. So having 1 million young people who are presidents from outside the margins who can be establishing custodial economic projects, that's going to be the cornerstone of imagination as a country. And one of the things that we'd love to explore with Palladium and with whoever friends want to come with us on a journey into the Pacific and around that, and particularly with our friends in the Pacific, is say, well, why don't we launch this from the Pacific, from the group that's going to get hit first by the water, hit first by the challenges, and has got this tectonic plates of challenges that are moving from geopolitical issues. And instead of having this division and this war battling and playing chess with people's lives, let's work out how we can go with this abundance of intelligence from the Pacific that can help us understand from the front line how we're going to need to shape the world for the next century. So we're really excited to link up with you, and thanks for taking the time to spend a bit of time with us tonight on the show. And hopefully it's the start of a really important fusion of a career of work of what you've been involved in, of 60 or 70 years of work in the Pacific and many, many years of life in the Pacific before. There's been aid and different work coming in there. And I hope if we're clever enough and open enough to the fusions of different mindsets, that we can see that the intelligence is already there. We've just got to be able to provide those connects for the Pacific out, and not us sort of put our big gory hands in to say we've got the solutions and play God. So man, stoked to kick it with you, and thanks for taking the time to hang out with us.
Awesome. Cheers, Jack.
Francois, how are you? How is your morning in France?
Very good. I'm glad to be with you. I know it's a little later where you are, but I think it's part of the diversity of perspective on the planet.
What do you think we're going? Like, we've been dancing around together for a little bit now for the last year or two. What's the stuff that you're starting to feel like as some edges where we might be able to crack something open?
I think one of the things that happened since we start is, we feel ever more connection, ever more possibility, and ever more things that are on their way to emerge. And, I just had a workshop with Otto Scharmer on learning to let go of the past and let come the future. And I think that's really a sort of improvisation that we not only like to do but need to do. And we need to learn how to do this because it's not so easy. Most of us have learned to think of the world as a relatively fixed world, whereas there is an old Chinese saying that says, the only thing that doesn't change is change itself. And that's not exactly true because even change is accelerating in a way in today's age, but there is certainly always changes. And so how do we prepare for this world is not so clear. But, as an evolutionary biologist, for me, it's obvious that, things are always evolving, especially bacteria have a generation time of 20 minutes. So I'm used to, these sorts of fast evolution. And I think that the new generation has something to say. I was at UNESCO last week and I had a fantastic conversation with a professor from Senegal that was telling me that the oral tradition has a magic dimension, which is that every tale is retold and reinvented while told. Each time it's generated.
That's one of the things which I've always found fascinating. Growing up, being Aboriginal in Australia, and being connected to our to our Indigenous family and our story so much. One of the things which I always struggled being a little bit skeptical was surely 20,000 years ago, someone just made up one of these stories, and then someone else made it up and then someone else made it up. So being able to look backwards and go, yes, we've always been making sense, but in that process, it doesn't devalue the connective tissue of this huge scaffolding of drafts that then get us nearer truth or nearer wisdom. And I think that is one of the beautiful things of constantly making sense with story. And I think probably one of the biggest, toughest things, Francois, that I feel like we've got to grapple with for people that have established expertise is to be able to say 3 words, which I don't know how you say in French, but I don't know. And if we can start to practice that again and again in leadership, I don't know, but I will try. And that's surely all we can do as we stare down the decade, and it's surely all we've ever done. But I think we've lied that, of course I know, I'm the professor. Oh, well, maybe a little bit.
Socrates was the wisest of all the Greeks because he knew that he didn't know. And that I think, we need some of those ancient tradition we should reinvent. Socrates was good at questioning the world and at questioning people around him. And I think we need, what was interesting is that his mother was a midwife. And so he described his Socratic method as meiotics, or as birthing, as giving birth to ideas and to people themselves again. And I think that's what we need. We need to give birth to the future. And so we need to reinvent the Socratic method, develop Socratech or, Myotech or, technologies that are inspired by the traditions. And we shouldn't do it just for the Greek tradition. We should do it for every tradition. And we should invent new forms of wisdom. My favorite poem is T.S. Eliot's. He says, where's the life we lost in living? Where's the wisdom we've lost in knowledge? Where's the knowledge we've lost in information? We have technology for information and knowledge now with ChatGPT. We have nothing for wisdom. And the ratio of intelligence to wisdom is very variable across individuals and across history, across culture. And that has led to some of the most beautiful part of our humanity and some of the worst part of our humanity, depending on that ratio of intelligence to wisdom. And the thing is that if the machines become ever more intelligent, but and we are not becoming more wise, and we have no ways of putting any wisdom in these machines, some of the bad ratio intelligence to wisdom might lead to terrible things. But if we know to increase our individual and collective wisdom and use the technology efficiently to tell new stories that includes this, that could make a world difference.
Well, I don't hang out with Professor Hope for any other reason than hanging out with Professor Hope takes me into a land of imagination. And when I'm in a land of imagination, it is deeply, deeply confronting because you are untethered. and you suddenly can look at a whole map around you and look at a whole world, and then you suddenly like genuinely starting to think about stars and stars beyond stars and things beyond things. Unless you have relationships that can bring you back to an anchor point, it's hard to say, I don't know. You think, oh, yeah, I think, Francois, that's one of the challenges. And also I find often that your species will get a little stuck in the movement. When it feels like the thing's being derailed, when it's going off plan, everything sort of goes crazy. And that's crazy because everything kind of is crazy.
It's such a privilege, Professor Hope, to get to meet you and hear your wise words. I wish this is just the beginning of a conversation, and just listening to you makes me more hopeful, which I guess is not completely a coincidence.
Well, Jack was telling me that you were sending him you sent him a couple of pieces of writing. Would you read one of your pieces out to us? Is that possible?
Okay, I can try.
You need French or English, whichever you would prefer.
No, I guess I'll do it in English because it's going to be easier for the audience. But I just have to take it. I'll try. I'll start with this one. Please write. You may wonder who is calling you out to you. Surely you know us, but do you recognize us? We cannot live without you, but with your help, we can conquer hearts. We can evoke the most beautiful emotions. We can even change the world. But you must learn to dare to take time for yourself and for us. Have you figured out who we are? Would you like more clues? We are on the tip of your tongue. We circulate from mouth to mouth. We are at your service to help you console, love, invent, and communicate. The Greeks knew of our power of creations, of poiesis. They knew that we are friends of the muses, that we are often born in the heart of the night. We can help heal wounds because we are the words for thinking. We are the stories waiting to be written. We are the dreams waiting to become realities. We are the poems waiting to move. We are the adventure waiting to be lived. We are the ideas waiting to be shared. So please write.
You know, when you find yourself in those rooms, Francois, and with very fancy people who have very serious jobs, and it seems they have no clue what to do, that moment, I think, can be very, very scary if you don't have the ability to write. Because in one moment you can think, oh my gosh, these people are in control and the world's going to end, and they're never thinking and they haven't thought about the plans and they're still repeating ideas from 50 years ago. Or you pick up the pen and you're like, well, hang on a minute, these people follow stories from 50 years ago. If we write a good enough story, they'll follow this story.
Yeah, and I think every generation can write his own story. And actually the word generations is the same as generate. So each generation should generate its own present and its own future. And that's what, we should all be learning how to do. And that's why, kids that have less of the weight of the past are so creative. And it's been shown by science. The science of creativity shows that there is a peak around age 5 and a second one around the teenage, and that it's so much higher of a peak of creativity than the one that comes later.
Well, it's been so nice to finally see you, Francois. And I'm excited to birth Professor Galactic. I think we're going to come across the seas and we're going to bring a new professor into the world together. So lovely to meet you. I'll let Jack finish the conversation. Thanks, Hope. Francois, as you kind of look to the next 12 months, are there some beats where you're just going, I am so excited for what's going to emerge here. I don't know what the exact shapes will be, but as you kind of think about some of the big system shifts in play over the next 12 months, whether it's in the UNESCO world or different people that you're coming across, or maybe it's harder to describe than the actual thing, but what's the energy that you're seeing or feeling in some playgrounds, and what's giving you that hope in the next sort of 12 months and beyond?
So the first things I started to do this very week, and I'm going to do nearly daily, is have conversations with young planetizens, young people that feel that, you know, they're citizens of the planet and they want to care for it, as well as caring for themselves and caring for their community, and see that there is a continuum in this. And I had the first conversation was supposed to be 1 hour and it lasted 2.5 because it was so exciting, and I learned so much. And it was very interesting to see, you know, where the birthing of a planetizen, because, you know, that's young person didn't know even the concept, and she loved it and bounced back to it and proposed a very creative way of doing things. So I really appreciated this, and so that's one dimension. The other is, in fact, I would like to create a community. So we have this, what we call the Planetizen Fellows, but I think we need fellow planetizens, which is even more than Planetizen Fellows in a way. And we need to have these fellow conversations with one another about, you know, what it means for us to be a planetizen. And I think we can be in the mood for these things, okay? And so by this, I want to play with words. You know, of course, MOOCs, this massive online open course. What if you replace the C of course with the D of discovery? Then you have the mood, okay? You have the massive online open discovery. And how do you discover yourself? How do you discover others? How do you discover, you know, the best way to caring for self, others, and the planet? How do you discover, you know, the beauty of nature? How do you discover your connection to yourself and to others? And, you know, how can we create a digital ecosystems where you're discovering what others think about these things, and you're co-constructing the future and the story together. And you can use, you know, one of the things I learned from this African professor of tales, in a way, was that there is one tale in Africa that says that we are all born with a needle, and that's the needle. If you lose it, you'll be damned. But if you use it well, it will make a difference. And what is this needle for? It's to weave in the connections and weave the fabrics of life that keeps reinventing itself. And sometimes, you know, some of this has been torn and you have to weave it back, okay? But basically, I think this weaving of connections and the tapestry of life, because, you know, it's more than just connections, it's creating patterns, it's creating, you know, dynamics and stories through this weaving. And that's what I hope to be able to do, is to see in my lifetime, and ideally in the year to come, some of this weaving happening at a planetary scale. Some of those stories resonating with one another, and some of this ability to do things together that we couldn't do alone. And if we can scale this, that has been always true at the local scale. But I think now we have planetary challenges, and we need to be able to learn to do this at a very different scale, including using, you know, technologies, AI and the like, and co-designing this. You know, I was blessed to be last September in the UN with the Secretary General, receiving the first use declaration co-written by 500,000 young people. And his answer was, you know, there is 4 ways to interact with the youth. The first is to ignore them. The second is to pretend to listen to them. The third is to have a dialogue. And the fourth is to co-construct the future. And he said, we've done 1 and 2 for much too long. We're just starting to do 3, but we have to learn to do 4. And so if we can collectively co-construct the future and do it in an intergenerational way where, you know, our generation serves the new generation and help them, you know, give birth to the future they want, that can make a big difference.
Yeah, and you can instantly flip a lever from looking at 1 million+ schools around the world, from these institutions to keep children away from adult life, to then saying, well, here is a lab. Here's 13 years of labs. There's our climate lab. Let's unite the 5,000 schools in that hemisphere together to be thinking about climate, and that can be their agenda in their laboratory work, which fuses the curriculum. Here is a lab that's going to be solving things around how we do circular fashion. Here is the lab that's going to be working out what does economics look like in the age of AI, and the motto that, I mean, it's there on school. Like you've got all of these empty mottos at the front of the school gates, often: be brave, bold and strong, be focused, alive, live, believe. Okay, cool. Have a focused charge and use your intelligence to those kids and activate them yesterday. If you went on the front of the school gates when you walked into a high school or a primary school anywhere around the world, our mission is collectively to solve the challenges around climate change within the next 10 years? I'll enroll my kid at that school. Let's go. You know, and I'm a part of a community of 5,000 schools that do that. And then the other 5,000, and it's mapping. That's where it's exciting, because collectively we have a huge amount of intelligence that we haven't tapped into outside the margins at all. And we have a huge amount of intelligence we haven't tapped into, like in terms of our connection to nature and to our translators who are custodial in our capacity to take that knowledge from nature and weave it through. So, Francois, we're on a we think we can be helpful in the next decade to be a design lab that can help fuse some of those weaves at scale. I think Imagination can be one of those networks that can be helpful. We've done our 20 years of learning. We feel like we're good translators in between. We feel like we can lead with story, and we've got our Indigenous systems thinking grounding us. And the next month we're doing some of the uglier stuff, which is trying to translate some of that that work and that visioning into deeper partnerships and the fusion, which I think is critical if we're going to see vision, story, art, then fusion to systematic engineering. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in us just being another charity that's fluffy or like pulls that, like if Prof Hope lives and we don't create systemic change, then that's devastating attack on hope and a devastating attack on imagination by me. I know the responsibility of what it means when we start playing with different creatures and different big stories. So we have this vision, we have this playground. As we move through the next like 10 years, what have you seen? And this is a sort of an awkward question to ask, and it's a setup question, but I want to get it on the record. Like, what do you see with AIM that you're excited about working with? What do you think we can do? Because what words you offer now will be the words that other people will be looking at as they want to potentially move with us and partner with us. And as we move through this phase, like, what can we do if we encourage each other to be the best version of these places? I definitely see in Learning Planet an organisation that can fuse. I see with the leadership and the philosophy and the knowledge that you all have got this amazing capacity to move from knowledge bearing, knowledge creation to systemic weaving. And I see that emerging in 5-10 years time. I'm so excited to see where you all have got to as well. So yeah, what do you see with us? You know, what would you say to other people who want to partner with us that you think we might be able to bring to the world? And what advice do you have for me strategically as we look ahead? Like, where can we play and be the most helpful?
I'm quite amazed by AIM's in general, and you, Jack, specifically, ability to be as creative and as forward-looking. I think that's invites every one of us, including myself, to go beyond what we are doing. You know, when you invited me to dream of Professor Galactic and think of planetism on a galactic scale was quite an experience for me. So I think you're in this Socratic method of that's you have with your own style, you help people to see beyond what they would look at by themselves, and I think that's your great strength. And I think that the way you apply this in the specific context of classrooms, but with this idea of IMAGI-NATION, when I describe what you do and I spell it IMAGI-NATION, then everyone understands very quickly that it's going to be a very different type of nation, a very different way of inviting people and young people to be this president of this IMAGI-NATION or IMAGI-Planet or IMAGI-Galaxy or whatever. Okay, I think is a splendid idea, and I think we definitely need new narratives, and I see ever more people in need for this. At the UNESCO level, at the national level, at every level, the level of the individuals, because, there is so much future anxiety. There is eco-anxiety, climate anxiety, but also AI anxiety. I mean, you name it, there is, and the level of anxiety is skyrocketing, and negative emotions are not good at, not only they are not good for the individual, but they are not good for the collective, because they can be self-fulfilling prophecies, and we can have a collapse just because we all believe there will be a collapse. So we need to have positive stories for the future, and inviting everyone to contribute to it is already, you feel better when you start talking about good things, but others as well. And when I was at UNESCO last week, it was lifelong learning educations for art and culture, and most of the presentation were these museums, that library, we bring art and culture to people, we do our job. And I came at last, and I told them, of course, we need to know the knowledge and culture and art of the past, but what about writing the art and culture of the future? What about inviting everyone at every age to write? I wrote, my first poem I wrote when I was in English 55. Okay, so that's tell you what a lifelong learner can do. Okay, you can learn to do these things at any age. And
I just learned how to skateboard, and I'm having a really good time, like moving very slowly on a skateboard, trying to work out how to not fall off, but then being okay with falling off.
Yeah, and that's basically what we all need to do. We need to be able to learn to skate on, a rough terrain, rough land, and that's what's happening. And we have to be able to learn to do this, and that's where art has some magic. Okay, art as the magic of art for me is like an alchemy. It can transform the worst suffering, the worst anxiety, the worst fears into something beautiful. And that's what has happened throughout history. Okay, and if you admit that, of course, not everything is necessarily as beautiful as you would want it, but you can transform even the thing that is not beautiful into something beautiful, then you contribute to make your own life more beautiful, and that's very important as a cathartic process. But if you start sharing this, you start having meaningful conversation with others, and you start weaving that tapestry of connections that create the future. And that's what I think we can do, and that's why I love the idea of bringing imagination in every classroom, because every kid in the world should be able to do this. And actually every grandparents should be invited in the conversation. But if the kids are part of the conversation, then they can take the whole family inside. And there is even some science that describes this very well. The best way to get parents to know about climate is to teach their kids. Especially girls are very good at teaching their dad.
Yeah, I have two daughters, and I'm getting many lessons. One of them's 5 and one of them's 8 months old. The non-verbal ones are very good lessons too, especially all through the entire night when you guys are having your daytime over there in France. Francois, it's one of the things I love about the potential of a human life is that it's never over until it's done. And I love how you keep learning and keep modeling that mentor role, which is to keep growing and keep asking and keep exploring. And I think we have so much potential in the ways that we can move and work together. So thank you so much for spending some time on Imagination TV with us. And we're really excited to be over in Paris with you. And I can't wait to spend some time face to face and put on a big story for you and some people in Paris, and to just keep moving with story, because that art that you described, that process of alchemy, that's what I see as that world of imagination. And if we're tethered, if we have our strong relationships to ourselves and our family, and we have some love in our heart, then we can fly. We can go off to these imaginative places, and we don't have to be trapped in our skin suits. We can have the opportunity to have that movement all the time. So thank you for the work that you do, and we're really excited to see what emerges with our work with Learning Planet over the next few years together.
Yeah, and I was delighted to meet Professor Hope today, and I can't wait to meet Professor Galactic. And I love the way you can play both roles at once. I certainly would dream of being able to skate this sort of art, because I think it's indeed very powerful.
I think that is definitely, if there, I'm sure there's plenty you can mentor me in, but I think that should be the takeout from today's show, that you puppeteer Professor Galactic. We'll do the training with you when we can give you your lifelong learning. I'll share my notes from skateboarding, and you can share your notes from puppetry. And from a serious education perspective, I could see what Jim Henson and the gang had done with these amazing creatures. And I was always been scared of having to be the person talking all the time. It's exhausting, and and to get up and do that keynote stuff. And I've, learned to play guitar and learned to do these other things just to try and help to move an audience to tell a better story. And what's amazing is the moment that you pull out Professor Ho or Professor Galactic at UNESCO, you just, even if your puppetry skills is, like the first time I did puppeteering, I took Panga, who's this really hard puppet, who was, no joke, a cross between a pangolin and a bat, which is like the thing that made COVID. So our puppet maker made this puppet that a year before the pandemic happened. Anyway, I went on a stage and I had no idea how to do it. And I missed the words and I got all that wrong, but it didn't matter. Like the audience and myself, it was magic for both of us. We made a jump, and over time I've worked out more of the lip sync. It's very challenging art and a beautiful art. And yeah, I think that'd be great. We should gift Prof Galactic to you and say, all right, here's your puppet training program. We'll give you a couple of mentors and tutors, and we'll let Prof Galactic grow with you. And then Prof Galactic can write, and you can film the videos, and it can be a place for you to have some freedom and space to move as well. So there's not so much responsibility on you as an individual, because none of us can carry all of the weight of that responsibility. We need our other puppets with us. Thank you, Francois.
Mate, thank you so much. It was an amazing moment, and I can't wait to start mentoring with you and be mentored by you. I think mentoring as a dance where both sides learn. I think is something that I can't wait to explore with Yolande. Thank you.
It's the best. We'll book in our puppet training session in Paris. We've got our puppet maker coming over with us, so we'll get you in the training program straight away. Awesome.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
See you, Francois.
Bye.
And our final guest on the show today is one of the Rock and AIM team members. And it's an absolute privilege for me to have a chance to work with you in this place. And one of the reasons why I love working with you so much is your depth of inquiry and just how you think. It's just so beautiful to be around human beings that think, because life is never boring when we're thinking and exploring wisdom. I wonder what it's been like for you being in this world of emergence and this play space around the Imagination Circle, which is a project we've been working on with Learning Planet. And the mail out that went out to the friends list shared some of the partners that are now part of that circle. But the circle started with us and Learning Planet, didn't it? It was sort of one of these TV shows with not many people watching. And then as that's grown to how many organizations are now in it?
At last count, about 50 different organizations had contributed to the circle, and it's just going to be 10 months old, so that's not bad at all.
Wow. And what have you taken from the experience selfishly? What's your learning curve been like?
Well, I've taken a massive headache, I'll say, which is pretty good. I think what I've taken from it the most is that beautiful moment when people who didn't know each other and were working in different parts of the world at their different age groups and in their different backgrounds, in their different contexts, start to build these relationships and these connections. And just seeing that connective tissue grow within the Imagination Circle for me has been about the most magical thing. And seeing how ideas spark in the conversations when they have them together. A high school student with an artist or designer or a university professor who's looking into imagination. So just watching that grow has been amazing. And to see that when we give things space to grow in their own way and at their own pace, something magical can really happen, much more than what we could try to design or create as ourselves. I think things are their own creators in an amazing way if we allow ourselves to go along with that.
And then you've just got to hold that little needle that Francois was passing on as a story, and then do a little nudge here. And that must feel satisfying, because in emergence, it can feel sometimes, which, we're going through a translation process now of these 6+ years of emergence in the system we've been sort of working on in this latest iteration. And now it's like, okay, how do we engineer this into a structure that's going to have value, that's going to have commerce, that can mean we can employ people around the world, that's going to have, ideally, economic value, that's going to reboot the earth in a way that's going to be really strong. how does it feel when you take that emergence and then you put two people together? Because that's what feels like makes the magic, you know, that then suddenly something's real and a structure's real and a system's changed.
It's exactly that word, magic. It does feel magical. It really does. It feels magical to sit and watch that. And another moment for me personally of absolute magic in this space of the Imagination Circle, of a community of people around the world who work on and around and with imagination, has been to see the extent to which every time we talk about that, every time we open up the conversation, it pings in so many places. Yes, 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 this is exactly what we need. So it's been fascinating to see something grow on its own and find that it has a response in so many parts of the world and in so many aspects of life, not just in education, not just like in mentoring or in the work that we do, but in so many aspects of life that imagination is this really crucial, fundamental thing for all of us. And so many different people in their different ways are in the process of trying to find a way where we unlock that, unblock that, and are able to really live with it and do the best that we can with it. So just watching these little things grow, it's really like mushrooms, I guess, and going, oh, wow, this is, well, we know that there is a whole mycelial network under the earth, and another mushroom from the same family of mushrooms, I guess, has popped up somewhere else. And just being able to trace that back together that's been magical for me, for sure.
Why there's without a shadow of a doubt, again, a bias thing and a setup. Like I'm your employer, I'm on a live TV show, you're live with me, so there's some context which is like critical. So this is no way could be seen as an objective truth, whatever you're going to say to this, but I think it could be, you know, in some way honest, hopefully, with that setup. But why are you doing this thing? Like, why do you work here?
Because it gives me a headache. I bet you didn't expect that answer. I genuinely do not know. I don't know. I'm just watching where it's going. And I'm going with it. And I've got to be honest, there are times when I'm standing on the edge and I'm watching it go and I'm going, well, the pace is not right for me, or the energy or whatever, it's gonna break, or I'm not in the right place. That happens on a regular basis. And I think that's part of being human as well, that, you know, the feelings come and go, the thoughts come and go, and then we stop and see what remains when all of those thoughts and feelings have passed and circled around, right? And what remains for me is this absolute fascination isn't the word. I think the word is hope, that, wow, we can actually shift the dial in particular ways. So I think maybe it's that. I don't really know, but that's the beginning of an answer. And I'm going to follow the threads of everything I've just said to find where the answer might lead me, or the answers.
Well, and I think that's yeah, I'm glad it gives you a headache, because it gives me a headache too. Like, you know, it's if you're following archetypes and scripture and well, someone did this in a movie, or someone did this in the case study, or this is how Phil Knight behaved when he did Shoe Dog, and I read his books, and now I'm going to act this way, and I'm going to employ someone this way, or this is the organization. When you're following these copies of everything, feel free to drink the tea or the coffee or whatever you're drinking, it's all good. But it can feel safe, but you just like, it's blinkered and it's not real. And when you are in a washing machine, you are actually then in outer space, which is our life. Like, you know, if it feels uncomfortable, imagine what it feels like outside the atmosphere without a spacesuit. Like, that would be pretty uncomfortable. And I in the churn internally at AIM, like, it's watching that journey when we don't, like, all of us just sort of say, well, here's the exact answer, because it would be so easy for someone to just seize the reins and go, well, this is how we're going to go, we're running right, and everyone goes, oh, finally we're running right. But it's orbing and it's moving and it's growing, and I think we have the clock ticking on our organization's life, 9 years or so left to go, 9 years and a few hundred days. And the things I really love is, you know, this show was like you wake up in the morning in another country, another time zone, with an email from me being like, hey, is this thing happening? And then suddenly I'm off running around with our two daughters and it's madness. And then Angus is in Melbourne with his little kid, and then Leia's trying to get on a plane, and a couple of our other team are not available at the moment. And the behind the scenes to make anything happen, like, you know, you get stuck in this moment of flux, and then the show was cancelled, and then I got a message on Signal, and then there was a text message saying the show's still on, and I'm talking to 3 or 4 other people, and you're like, this is actually like, this is if you can get through that process and not explode, like, you know, Francois there, you know, Dave's there, like, we're here. It's just finding the time through those friction moments to then just go, oh, okay, we can be together, you know, and that's the part that I really like get the most value out of, is hanging in there to find the other side, and the other side of these very, very rare moments of sense making, of when it feels okay, or you know, it's not every day I get to have the gift to talk to someone like Francois or David or yourself, you know, I'm in that connection, and to elevate out of the day-to-day and just think and take that energy and really feel it. So yeah, I'm thankful for you and for all of the AIM team for the trips we go on, and I think it's necessary what we're doing, because we're going with eyes wide open, hearts wide open, and it means it hurts, and then it feels great, and then we feel it all, because then we're alive. So I just thank you for all the work you do, Ermin, and I'm really excited by what's going to start to reveal itself out of Paris and beyond in the next 10 plus months, you know.
Thank you, Jack. And yes, it was a spin cycle this morning, your this evening. It really was a spin cycle, and the big lesson for me here, and what fascinates me again, and one of the things that I find really magical, is that a lot of our partnering, just having Dave on the show earlier, having Francois on the show as well, a lot of our relationships with our partners grow out of this I don't know moment. There's a lot of that characterizes the relationships that we have. There's a lot of energy in each of those relationships, and there's this joy as well in those relationships. And I think, and this is a word that a lot of people would be very, very uncomfortable to bring into a space, in a workspace, but there is love in those relationships, for sure. And I think it's that energy and that joy, that curiosity, that love, the wanting to do, all of those, and the kindness as well, the failure today, the forgiveness of self, of others, being understanding, having that empathy, all of the values that we have talked about as the values of imagination. I think all of them were embodied in the situation today, for sure. And I think all of them are embodied in all of the relationships we have with the partners, those who go along with us in creating something new in the emergence, those who stay in the sort of more tangible and in the more sort of defined space, because that's where they play the strongest. There is room for everyone in each of these relationships, I feel, and in the landscape that we are in. And those values for me are really, really important, and really helped me to be here today in this conversation with you. Thank you very much for that. And thanks to those who joined us, and who bring their energy and the beauty of their souls as well into the what we can do together.
And it's going to be as a case study, like, yeah, we gather as a team and we're like, okay, well, how are we going to get these partnerships to move to the next phase? Imagination TV has proven in the last 2.5 years to just be this hub to go, well, let's just fuse just the energies at a certain frequency, at a different plane, and say, yep, we're definitely going to dive in and we're going to do something deeper. And then from that, 10 months of this circle arises, or this university arises, or Imagination the country arises. Like, very, very real things have come out of just getting together on a Zoom call with 5 people. And I don't know, there's probably 2 people watching this thing live. And if there are, hello to the 2 people watching it live. But it's a text. It's a text for someone to come back on. And then when we do pull off the $100 million raise, and when we do roll out Imagination, when we do continue to finish these 27 systems change projects we've worked on, we can see that this is just, it's only ever 3 or 4 people jumping on a video call or whatever that can move it. But if you suddenly flip it to a live television show, anyone can do that anywhere in the world. You don't have to get on a business class flight to fly to New York and try and get yourself into the room with the executive who's then going to play games with you 4 or 5 times and make you fly back 4 or 5 times and then maybe never ever give you any money anyway. You know, you can just get together, see what happens, make an on the record, yep, we're going to move. And that's the beauty of this model, is it's like this is making that oral connection and saying, yeah, we're going to work together in front of the public, outward facing, forever. This will be a record of you and I having a conversation with me in my garage and you in your place in France, and Angus behind the scenes sitting somewhere in some hidden room in his house in Melbourne and talking to an amazing professor in France who's reading us his poetry, and Dave not going to dinner or coming back to dinner and then talking about what we can do in the Pacific. And from there, it'll happen. And that's the wild part. I don't know how. I don't, with this money piece, like I'm just trying to resist getting into the transactional side of things. Like, we're definitely going to need the funding to do the work of what we're doing. But if we keep going with that energy and keep offering, if people like Francois and Dave and different people can see that we can be the spark, then I know that commerce will have to show its value around that. And so, I think that's our way, you know, that we've got, this is 1 of 5, we've got 4 more to go. And this is the process. This is a process of emergence. This is the process of being in a natural way to try and bring it together, and from confusion to fusion. I think we've had a moment like that in this Imagination TV session, from feeling confused before we jumped on to then maybe having some fusion. And then the team that do the next show will feel better. So thank you for going first, Ermin. Thank you for going first, Gus, again in the next series. And now, you know, by the 5th one, you'll be like, oh, this is how you do it, everyone. This is how we did it 5 years ago. So,
thank you for that, Jack. It's always good to start the day being in a spin cycle and then coming to a place of fusion. It's been great to meet everyone and just to be a part of the conversation. So yeah, next one.
Awesome.
Thanks,
okay.
everyone.
Well, we'll wrap that there. Have a great time for those of you that have hung in there and watched this one. And really pumped to see what arises out of the Pacific and with Palladium, and then really deep, incredible, amazing emerging work at a systems level to get imagination in every classroom global and planet, and UNESCO crew and a bunch of other friends that we're working with out of Paris. So that gets us going in these series of announcements for the next 5 sessions that we're going to do online to really keep moving us towards this $100 million raise and this pathway to the next 10 years of Imagination in the Country, opening up in October 2023. Over and out. I'm going to go and hang out with some little ones upstairs who are probably... Thanks, gang. This is the part where you're not meant to talk and not meant to eat your dinner. But like, if you hung in there and watched this bit, then yeah, I'm eating mushroom with like some strange noodle. I'm very thankful for dinner. Yeah, I'll
It's
make
like
it.
on the other side of the world. A mushroom that probably